I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had some conversations with AI that's gone down the wrong path because it's like it assumes I mean something else. And until I code that in and say, hey, check with me and validate that this is accurate, then maybe we go down the wrong path and it's like, whoa, hold up. This is not what I meant. And sometimes that's because I don't know what I meant. And so building in that opportunity to validate, get that feedback, make corrections, move forward together, is really, really healthy for a that dynamic. And measuring empathy is a really tough thing to do, which is probably why a lot of businesses either don't or struggle to do so. And so we really have to look at what the point of being empathetic is, and that is human connection, and that is understanding others. And so when we talk about trying to measure empathy, we have to be, really outcome focused. We have to be, are we actually connecting with our customers in a way that matters to them? And that requires us understanding them, us leading with curiosity, us not just leaning on rigid policies and instead saying, is there a way that we can understand our customers and find a solution that works and fits for them that can get us the same outcome? And so when measuring empathy, we have to look at how successful we are at actually getting to the outcomes that matter to our customers. And so a lot of people, will use customer satisfaction and things like that. But I think that something that really matters to customers is how successful they are in actually doing business with us and us understanding their needs. And so it's tough to measure empathy. I don't even know if it is something that you should really try to make into a metric, because I think that would kind of defeat some of that purpose. But you can keep some things in mind. So first of all, lead with curiosity. Always challenge your assumptions and try to understand what your customers are there for, what they're there to do, and how you can be a guide to helping get them there. You can replace, you know, this conversation around CSAT with Net Promoter Score or, customer effort score or any of those, right? And my philosophy is that, these are all signals. So over-indexing any one metric is always dangerous. And to gain that complete understanding of our customers, we have to look at a variety of metrics. Um, but you also need to look at what that customer really, really needs. And so any kind of experience metric, that's a signal, it's part of the equation. I mean, look at customer retention. Look at your sales, look at your revenue. There's lagging indicators, there's leading indicators. But I think too, any of those metrics in isolation are only going to give you a piece of the equation. And so you really have to see, and maybe this is done in, customer research, or it's looking at the verbatims of customer feedback, or all of these things. It's all just part of our understanding of our customers. And so my point being is you can replace any of these metrics with other metrics, and they're all just still going to be metrics. They're going to be a sliver of the equation. And without understanding and building that context around these things, none of it really means anything, right? We can assume, and we can, use that as a test, or, some kind of, like I said, some kind of signal of something. But you also have to look at what are customers' actual behaviors, right? What are they actually doing because of the experiences that you're creating? And for a business, that means, are they actually sticking around? Are they spending more? Are you getting a lot of referrals from them? right? These are all behaviors, which are more of the lagging indicators, which might make some companies feel a little bit uncomfortable because they have to wait for some of those, but don't wait. Just keep an eye on all of those and make sure that we're not, we're not making assumptions and basing off of that.
These indicators, these right questions to ask, I think everything leads back to the point of curiosity that you made. Am I right?
Yes,
Okay. Right, I get.
that's 100%, 100%. And really, the way that I see it is you ground everything in the fact that we are all humans trying to establish relationships with other humans. And it's really easy to strip the humanity out of this relationship and make it very transactional. And so at the end of the day, we have to ground ourselves and say, like, you know, relate to yourself as a human, understand your business as an organization made up of humans interacting with our customer base, which are also humans, and ground everything in a establishing and fostering and supporting a stronger relationship. How would you, if you were one-on-one with a single customer, how would you interact with that customer? You probably wouldn't bombard them with a bunch of surveys without having, any other kind of, experience, positive experience and any kind of other conversation or, just kind of like you probably would use people's names. You would probably like these are basic things, right? That we in the business world we have to keep in mind and that's just all part of, you know, establishing a human relationship. So the way I look at AI in this mix is around cognitive load. And so our employees are, them being humans, they only have so much bandwidth. And so if you throw all of these different requirements on them, and you're making them click through a bunch of different screens trying to find the information they need to connect with that customer, or just do the basic task, then that pulls them out of that conversation. And so this is where I think AI has great value in helping people foster these relationships, is because it can take some of that cognitive load off them, right? It can do some of this stuff for them. It can pull the right information up as maybe an AI assistant or, chatbot, something it can pull the necessary information up front for an employee to connect with that customer, to understand their history with your company, right? Maybe just understanding that this is the third time they've called and it's about these, similar topics, that's going to change the dynamic of that conversation. And so all of these things helps us as humans kind of get out of the weeds of the kind of mechanical process aspects of interacting with customers. And it helps us maybe even just listen a little bit better and truly seek understanding in a conversation with a customer and get peel back that onion and try to get to the real meat of the issue with that customer. Because from my own experience, sometimes customers don't even really know what they want or what they need or what their issue that they're trying to solve is until you have a dialogue with them. You spend more than that, 2 minutes or whatever that SLA is, uh, that we're using to measure our performance in contact center or whatever, right? Maybe you have to spend a little bit more time digging into that to really get a successful resolution with that customer and to help them feel heard. And I think that's the other part is that it's one thing for our customers to have their issue resolved. It's another thing for them to feel like they've been heard throughout that. And I think AI has a unique opportunity to be able to do some of these things behind the scenes that can empower our representatives, our agents, to really put that extra focus on that customer instead of trying to find things or trying to navigate different screens. So I think bringing in emotions to any journey map is critical. And a lot of times, I would I would relate back to my postal service days when I'm thinking about something like this. I'm thinking about the experience a customer goes through when they've ordered maybe a birthday present or something like that for their kid. And there's an emotional journey that goes through that, especially um, especially if there's kind of a time limit. So you have, the expectation setting. So you have that service level agreement that's communicated right up front. And it says your package, should get here by X date, right? And so you have an immediate emotional reaction to that, which is a lot of times it's like, okay, good. It's comfort, right? There's some security there. Like this will arrive in time. But what happens when that journey does not go down the happy path, right? Not everything works as planned. And so you can end up with a roller coaster of emotions throughout that journey, especially if you have to interact with whatever company that is to get answers or insights because you don't have all of the correct information up front. And so you have these emotions that kind of waver. So you have anxiety when things immediately go wrong, right? And you have hopelessness. And so you contact that company or and try to get answers. And maybe there's frustration that seeps in or a feeling of abandonment, depending on how that company interacts with you. And so these are all things that compound on that entire emotional journey and can create that lasting impression. In that case, it would probably be a negative lasting impression. And so you have to consider as a business, what are our processes, policies, what's our experience really, um, what kind of emotions is is kind of what are our customers feeling throughout that whole journey? And so by mapping that, you can understand, okay, here are some major pain points that we can solve that have this huge emotional impact. And how can we change that experience at that moment to maybe bring that journey back up into that happy path, right? And start bringing back positive emotions. And a lot of companies, maybe they wait till it's in customer service's hands and now they're reacting and trying to save that, which is it's great to have a safety net. But my perspective is do as much as you can to prevent that from happening in the first place. Address the root causes and ensure that at any given point you can kind of intercept a journey that's going down the wrong path, and you can restore trust, and you can help that customer feel comforted. So basically, you have to be super aware of what emotions are occurring throughout that entire journey. So first of all of those negative emotions, you can maybe tie that experience to retention or something else that shows the true impact from the business angle, and use that story to help influence the organization. Say, hey, this is a real problem. Um, we need to prioritize this part of the journey and really correct it and focus on providing, instilling positive emotions. And so companies who fail to bring emotions into the equation are really missing a huge opportunity to to build trust with our customers. I mean, these how we make people feel, that's 9/10 of a relationship, right? And so if we aren't conscious of how we're making people feel throughout that experience, then we're never really going to land it with our customers. We're going to be very process oriented. We're going to focus on what our numbers are telling us as far as like where customers are maybe channel shifting or dropping out and churning in general. And that's all important information. But if we don't know what kind of led up to that, how our customers felt before that, we're not going to really be able to create a solution that really positively impacts them and really connects with them and helps them feel secure and feel like they can trust you. I kind of look at this question is, what are things that I as a human need to do when interacting with other humans, right? What are some of those non-negotiables? And so when I think about this, Um, first of all, don't make assumptions, right? I mean, nobody likes to be put in a box immediately. And so it always gets back to lead with that curiosity. If we don't lead with seeking understanding, then we're never going to be able to connect with anybody. And that leading with understanding also comes to like, well, what are our, maybe with AI, it's understanding what, it's kind of self-reflection, understanding what that tool can and cannot do and should not do. And so setting those boundaries as far as like, ensuring that you're not hallucinating, right? And finding ways around that, and which, in a human to human dynamic, that's lying or gaslighting, right? And so those are very damaging to relationships and immediately erode trust. And so being very, very conscious of how of maybe quality control and how that model is being trained is really important. Some of these foundational things, and also maybe don't just respond with generic replies. Some personalization and just as any kind of relationship, if somebody identifies some kind of way that they feel, they put that out there, then you need to respond appropriately to that. And so should AI, instead of it being kind of a generic, like, I'm sorry that you feel sad kind of way. Like maybe it needs to be a little bit more thoughtful. And again, these are situations where we should be conscious of whether, AI is the right tool in the first place. But it is getting really good at doing this kind of stuff. And so by creating some boundaries around like, you know, building trust with customers through um, maybe even just repeating the problem that they shared with you and thanking them for bringing that problem to you and giving you the opportunity to solve it for them, right? And showing that you've actually heard and understood what their issue is and give them an opportunity to correct you on it. So with AI, that means lining up all of what you understand or what AI understands out of the situation, saying, is this correct? Right? Asking these questions, validating it before you move on. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had some conversations with AI that's gone down the wrong path because it's like it assumes I mean something else. And until I code that in and say, hey, check with me and validate that this is accurate, then maybe we go down the wrong path and it's like, whoa, hold up, this is not what I meant. And sometimes that's because I don't know what I meant. And so building in that opportunity to validate, get that feedback, make corrections, move forward together, is really, really healthy for that dynamic. And also it helps you get that task done faster because you spend less time trying to go back and forth and trying to redirect something, AI model that's taking you off in a completely wrong direction and giving you this huge long reply that is completely irrelevant, right? And you get a lot of frustration out of that. And so just with any other human interaction, lead with curiosity. It is seek verification that you're on the right track. It is show that you actually understand what they're saying and what they need and give them that opportunity to correct you. Um, and then it's actually giving helpful solutions, um, but that's through that understanding. So the outcome is really like that is the final product of all of this pre-work that we do. Hated these conversations as a person to have with anybody. I don't like saying no to people. And But what I've learned is that the relationship, the trust that you can build with somebody before giving them bad news is really, really important. And they have to feel heard, understood. And so, that's a really important part is still some of the same foundations that I kind of outlined before is you have to lead with curiosity, don't make assumptions. And you have to build this foundation of trust that, hey, this is not just kind of an auto response saying, just empirically, just no, right? Just categorically, this is just a full stop. People don't like being backed up into corners and seeing that they have no options. And so we have to help them kind of move forward and become solution based, and we have to be solution based, and we have to build this trust with them and show that we understand, show that we have done something to try to address their concerns. Give them the bad news early, though, right? Don't bury the lead. If you can't do that one specific thing that a customer's asking for, then say, I'm sorry, I can't do this. However, here's what we can do. And so it's keeping them solution oriented. And sometimes there aren't any good options, but just showing that you've done all of this pre-work and that you've done your due diligence to make sure that you've explored every avenue first is enough to build that trust and say, okay, at least I see that you've tried. And so I think the same applies with leveraging AI or whatever. You have to demonstrate that this is not just an immediate, like just hard block, no, um, rigid policies, and never, ever, ever say because of our policies. I mean, you should explain that maybe the policies are limitations, but people don't really respond too well saying no because our policies restrict this. They're gonna their response to that is, well, why? Why is your policies like that? Right? They don't care that, you're bound by these policies. They're just going to start challenging those policies and they're going to escalate it to a person that can challenge those policies if they are so emotionally inclined. And so all of this work to kind of get ahead of, kind of anticipate the customer's needs and get them to be, kind of get this relationship to be not really adversarial, headbutting, but instead we are partners in solving this issue for you. Here's what I've done so far. And first of all, I understand what you're asking, what you're going through, and here's what I've done so far, and then here are our options moving forward. And so every no, it's going to be some degree of, here's how we continue to move this forward. And but you still have to say no. Just help them be more solution oriented by giving them some options. My thought on this one is that reactive complaint filing will disappear. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of times we as organizations have the necessary data to understand that something has gone wrong. And so if we can leverage that data and maybe we use AI to help us identify these patterns, we should be able to flag these issues ahead of time before our customers even notice that there's a problem. And so maybe AI can become a sort of a safety net and start the recovery process before a customer notices. And so I think that this is really important because a lot of times issues are compounded by the fact that time has passed since the issue has occurred, and maybe when they notice or when they can get a complaint in, or when they can, start that process, like how much of that pain can we eliminate just by being a little bit more proactive and leveraging the data we already have, right? And understanding, leveraging our history with other complaints or other defects that we've had to recover from. If we use that knowledge, then we can start to recognize patterns that lead up to, the actual those same issues and start putting things in place to prevent them in the first place, or having an ability to recognize those beforehand and start that solution. And a lot of times we can even build in a lot of these troubleshooting aspects into that and start resolving the issue before it even gets to a human. And so if you as a human say that there is, human intervention that's necessary, if instead of receiving a vague case that you don't really understand, what the customer's issues are completely, it's maybe symptoms that they're able to communicate to you and some basic general contact information, you're going in basically blind, right? And so I think that there's an opportunity for the necessary information for you to solve, for that to be compiled all in one place and give you a more complete picture. And then you can do a proactive outreach to that customer and say, hey, and as a reminder, they have not filed this complaint. So instead, you can give them a call or email them ahead of time and say, hey, we've noticed an issue in your order. Don't worry, we're resolving this. Here's what we've already done. And if they get that and they're like, oh, I didn't even realize there was an issue, but I feel confident that this is being taken care of because they're already doing the work without me even having to know about it to fix it, then that's going to be a big relationship trust builder.